All right, welcome to Pro Football First 50 Years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, you can go online, and I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to check out a game from like the 20s or the 30s, I mean, you can obviously go online, find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might even find starting lineups for each team. But exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you, 3D coming at you. You and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes, if that's all right with you. Let's get it on. And today's game, exhibition game. The New York Giants and the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. 9/11, September 11th, 1959. That is a two of the old time. Obviously, the Bears were one of the initial two that started in 1920. The Green Bay Packers started in 1921. The Giants were the fourth team. They started in 1925. Obviously, the Bears were not the Chicago Bears. They were the Decatur Staleys in 1920. There won't be a quiz on this at the end of the video, I promise you. 1920, they were the Decatur Staleys. 1921, they were the Chicago Staleys. 1922, they were the Chicago Bears. But this game is an exhibition game. And interestingly, though, it was played at Soldier Field in Chicago. But it wasn't the home of the Bears at the time. The Bears didn't start playing at Soldier Field until 1971. The Bears were playing at Wrigley Field. Now, the thing was back then, which happened quite often as it did with the Giants were playing in Yankee Stadium, the home of the Yankees. So the Giants didn't touch Yankee Stadium turf until October 18th. For crying out loud. And it was like pretty much like the same thing was with the Bears. The Bears did not play like on Wrigley Field because obviously the Cubs were playing there. So they want to obviously chew up the field at all. So, but interesting, this game is played in obviously, as I say, Soldier Field, where at that time, the Cardinals played in 1959, the one season. In 1960, the Cardinals moved to St. Louis. Interestingly, let's take a look. Let's whip up the and I'll show you. Share the screen. We'll start with the Giants here first. Their schedule here and all and everything. And I'll go a little bit more in depth and detail when we get to the Chicago Bears, about the interesting part of this being at Soldier Field and all that. Now we're seeing with the Giants. Oh, this is the Bears. My bad. Hold on. Ding, 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 ding. There you go. See with the Giants. Giants had a so-so preseason. They won 3. They lost 3. Newsflash, they would lose this one 18-6. Then they would finally, their next game of all plays, they played the 49ers. They were played out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I guess I'm guessing the University of Utah, maybe. We'll find out because that's going to be my next video at the Ute Stadium. So that's where their final preseason game would be. The Giants would lose this one, and they would fall to 2 wins and 3 losses in the exhibition, and they would win their final one, and they would finish 3-3. Back then in 59, they played 12 regular season games, 6 preseason games. There were a few teams that actually played 7 preseason games. They played 12. They almost played as many preseason games as they did exhibition games. There were a few teams that actually played 7 preseason games, for crying out loud. You're never going to see that nowadays. That's long by the wayside. But with the Giants had a very prosperous regular season. It would finish with the best overall record at 10-2. Got him to the championship game, but as you see down here at the bottom, it didn't help him in the championship game as it would wind up being a rematch with the Colts. The Giants would lose 31-16. Giants actually had a 9-7 lead going into the fourth quarter, and on all heck broke loose. The Colts scored 24 unanswered points to go up 31-9, and then the Giants scored about a minute or so to go in the game to make it somewhat respectable. But it was close for three quarters. But you see the Giants here. You see a whole lot of W's. They beat the Rams to start the season. Then they got blown out in Philly. As hey, when you got Norm Van Brocklin throwing the ball, Tommy McDonald and Pete Retzlaff out there running around catching passes, anything's possible with the Eagles. And the Eagles had a very, very fine season, might I add. So the Eagles put up 49 points. Actually, you can see, the Eagles put up the most points of any team against the Giants here. But then the Giants, they won 5 in a row. Then they lost a tough one. Bobby Lane completed a touchdown pass with about a minute or so to go in that game. And so the Steelers beat the Giants 14-9 at Yankee Stadium. Then the Giants would win their final 4. So the Giants would finish with a record of 10-2. They would win the Eastern Division by 3 games. The Eagles were 7-5, and the Browns were 7-5. Now, the Bears, on the other hand, very streaky, very, very streaky team, as we'll see here. And I'll get over that one thing about Soldier Field in just a moment here. But we'll see, very streaky. The Bears, outstanding preseason. Look at this, for crying out loud. They won their first 5. They were just straight up killing teams. 54-17, 52-14. They beat the Giants 18-6. And then they lost a tough one to the Browns, the final preseason game. So they finished 5-1. Wow. But then you'll notice here, the Vince Lombardi's first ever game that he coached in was a big Packer upset. Packers won 9-6. Then they would beat the Colts, who would wind up winning, who were the defending NFL champions, and obviously who would be the 1959 champions. They beat them. Then they lost 3 in a row. So then they were 1-4, and basically they had a pulse. It was barely noticeable. The only way that they really, for the most part, they had to pretty much win out to have a chance at possibly going for the division title. Because back then, there's only 6 teams. There was only 12 games. If you lost like 5 games, chances of you winning a division title was really pretty slim. Usually there was always one team that only had a couple of losses, and sometimes there was teams that maybe only had like 1 loss or so. So they lost their 5th game. You can forget about any title chances that they had. So they pretty much had to win out, being at 1-4. And that's what they did. They won their final 7 games, and they finished 8-4. But they were 1 game out of first place. They were 8-4. The Colts finished with a record of 9-3. The Colts won the division, and they went on, obviously, and they wound up winning the title. But the interesting thing I want to mention here is that this game here on 9/11 between the Giants was played at Soldier Field, which was the home of the Chicago Cardinals for the one season, 1959. In the following season, the Cardinals would go to St. Louis. Well, on this particular date, they would play. They would go to St. Louis. They become the St. Louis Cardinals in 1960, and they would play at Busch Stadium. So on this one particular date, on 9/11, 1959, did they play the Cardinals? Yeah, they played the Cardinals. Play the Cardinals. Well, notice here the Cardinals on 9/11, right, the same day that the Bears and the Giants were playing in Soldier Field, which was the home of the Cardinals for that year. The Cardinals on 9/11 were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in St. Louis, Missouri at Busch Stadium, which would be the home of the Cardinals the following year. Although they didn't know it at the time. The Cardinals are trying it because they were always like the redheaded stepchild to the Bears. The Cardinals had a few good years in the late 40s, but for the most part, they were not very good, especially in the 50s. The Bears were usually pretty much a powerhouse. the Cardinals had some very, very bad years. They had a hard time drawing. They couldn't compete with the Bears, so they wanted to get out. They were pretty much going to be charged like a fee, like to move, and they couldn't even afford that. But when the AFL rolled around, the NFL was trying to put teams in cities that could possibly hold an NFL franchise. And one of those cities, I have a couple of them, well, two. One of them was in Dallas, right, where they put the Dallas Cowboys in 1960. And the other one was in St. Louis. A fantastic place, St. Louis, for sports. The Cardinals, right? Not so much at the time, St. Louis Blues, but they weren't around then. But a great place for football. So the Cardinals in 1959, obviously played their final season in Chicago, and then they moved in 1960 to St. Louis. And when the AFL was possibly thinking about moving, maybe putting a team into St. Louis, the NFL wanted to get in there first. And so they basically, what they did is I believe George Halas actually dished out some money as well. But I think the NFL and possibly George Halas dished out some money to move the Cardinals franchise from Chicago to St. Louis. So the Cardinals, I don't know if they had to I don't know if they had to spend any money at all. But prior to the AFL maybe possibly trying to get a team in St. Louis, the Cardinals wanted to get out of Chicago, but their moving was might have been out of the question because they just didn't have much money. So interestingly though, that the Cardinals on this day that we're talking about here were actually playing a game in their home in 1960. So that's one of the reasons why Soldier Field. And this is a charity game as well too. We'll take a little more depth and detail here, but as you can see here with the Cardinals, they were just a terrible, terrible team. They beat the Redskins, who were a horrible team. Then they lost 4 in a row. Then they beat the Steelers, but then they lost the final 6 games. They were just a terrible, terrible team, and they wanted to get out. They wanted to get their own home, their own identity, and they did that in 1960. So, but back to this game. What we got here? All right, so we got this one here, and so this is exhibition now. Of course, exhibition doesn't count, but these wind up being 2 very good teams. The Giants finished 10-2, and the Bears finished 8-4. 2 of the absolute best of the best in the NFL in 1959. So, this game here was played at Soldier Field. So let's take a little bit of the history here, shall we, of Soldier Field? And we'll find out it was like listed and then delisted. It was like one of the historical sites, and then it wound up, getting a makeover, and it got delisted. Well, we'll go over that in just a minute here. But Soldier Field is a multi-purpose stadium on the near south side of Chicago. Opened in 1924. The stadium has served as the home of the Chicago Bears since 1971. So the Bears were playing in Wrigley Field, but until 1970. 1971, they moved to Soldier Field. But it was obviously soccer stadium. It's held, Soldier Field, many, many different sporting events. The stadium has a football capacity of 62,500, making it the smallest stadium in the NFL. So I'm not sure if they have expanded that at all or not. I'm not exactly sure, because sometimes with this Wikipedia, it may not always be right up to date. But let's see. Soldier Field has served as the home venue for a number of other sport teams, including the Chicago Cardinals, University of Notre Dame football. Hosted the 1994 FIFA World Cup, Women's World Cup, multiple CONCACAF Gold Cups. I just like saying CONCACAF. And over World Games, Special Olympics, all kinds of things. But On December 3rd, 1919, Chicago-based architectural firm Halliburton and Roach was chosen to design the stadium, which broke ground on August 11, 1922. The stadium cost $13 million, baby. That was a lot of money back then. Let me tell you what, freaking what. A large sum for a sporting venue at the time. In comparison, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum had cost less than $1 million in 1923. Wow. Let's see. On November 11, 1925, the stadium's name was changed to Soldier Field in dedication to the U.S. soldiers who had died in combat during World War I. Very, very fitting. Very, you can never argue with that. Anytime you dedicate anything to the servicemen and women, I mean, you can never argue with that. That's absolutely fantastic. Its formal rededication of Soldier Field was held during the 29th annual playing of the Army-Navy game on November 27, 1926. The stadium's design is the neoclassical style. Columns rising above the east and west entrances. I mean, it just fantastic. Unfortunately, they changed it up a little bit. But the Bears moved in. Before they moved into the stadium, the Chicago Bears had played select charity games at Soldier Field as early as 1926, when they played their former crosstown rivals, the Chicago Cardinals. The Cardinals also used the stadium as their home field for their final season in the city in 1959. This season that we're talking about. 1971, the Bears moved to Soldier Field full-time, originally with a 3-year commitment. The team previously played their home games at Wrigley Field, the home of the Chicago Cubs, but were forced to move to a larger venue due to the post-AFL-NFL merger policies requiring that stadium's capacities be at least 50,000. And I don't even think the Bears, I don't even think Wrigley Field could hold even 40,000 people. I mean, it was a beautiful place that, what an unbelievable place, but I mean, just didn't hold that many people. On September 19, 1971, Bears played their first home game at Soldier Field. They defeated the Steelers 17-15. Dick Butkus picked off, I think, 2 of Terry Bradshaw passes. I don't know what. I mean, if you look on YouTube and all of that, so you can see the highlights. I mean, he just like Terry Bradshaw dropped back the pass, and Dick Butkus is in the middle of the field, and he just threw like 2 passes right to him. So, anyway, then there was replacement talks, and they did some renovations. Back in 1978, there was a bunch of stuff, a new press box, 60 sky boxes, all different kinds of things. But it was listed, see, we all know it's over here, U.S. National Historic Landmark. It was a historic landmark. It was designated as a U.S. National Historic Landmark on February 27, 1987. After they redid it all, it was delisted on February 17, 2006. But you can see here, right? I mean, now this right here, right? You see right here? The Armed Forces Benefit Football Game. So this was a preseason game. Looks like that could be Mike Ditka there. This is Soldier Field right here. Right? I mean, just look at that. Man, how beautiful is that, huh? The columns here on both sides. I mean, my goodness. Unfreaking believable. How freaking beautiful is that, huh? My goodness, 1963. But as you see, 2001, the Chicago Park District, which owns the structure, faced substantial criticism when it announced plans to alter the stadium. And here we go. On January 19th, 2002, the night of the Bears' playoff loss to the Eagles, demolition began as tailgate fires still burned in trash cans in the parking lots. As the fires, they're in there taking everything down, right? They removed 24,000 stadium seats in 36 hours. A speed record never exceeded since. Took down 24,000 seats in 36 hours. Holy cow. Wow, I don't know how the heck they did something like that. But so this is basically what it, right? Aerial view of Soldier Field during the renovation, 2002. So, all right, you got the long, or whatever you want to call it, big ass U or horseshoe here, right? The columns here and all, but you can see everything like ripped out everything. And then they got, like some. Right. I got the columns here and all and everything, but it just looks different. Very, 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 very different. So let's what do we got here? Let's take some look at a few pictures here. See, a lot of what I got here also, I think I have, Chicago Cardinals with Soldier Field. So a lot of this, I'm going to have pictures of the Cardinals here at Soldier Field. But this one here, right, you got the Cardinals and the Bears at Soldier Field, 1959. So this game here, when was this game here? This game here was, and there was a lot of people showed up here because the Cardinals were the home team. What was it? But the Bears played. So 48,000 people showed up for this game. So that game was November 29th, 1959. November 29th, 1959. You can see a lot of people showed up for this game. There's no sense that people aren't going to sit up in the top corner because this is like way past the end zone, way past the end zone. But you can see here today in Chicago Cardinals, here's the Cardinals lead for St. Louis. But once again, you can see here, this is against the Bears. It's probably could be the same game I'm talking about right here. But you see the columns up here. Absolutely, just freaking believable, beautiful. Unbelievable. Let's see here. Okay, Soldier Field was built in 1924, but didn't host a pro football team until 1959, when the Cardinals played there for one season. Just crazy. Look how freaking huge and right. Took till 1959 till it hosted an NFL team. Unbelievable. Let's see here. It is Pittsburgh Steelers. Cardinals versus the Steelers. Doesn't say when it is. Right? Look at that, how beautiful that is. But it's hosted many, many sporting events. This one here hosted Olympic-style games. Chicago's Olympic Stadium. Whoops. This is when they put AstroTurf down. I hated it. I can't stand this. I can't stand AstroTurf. Football is supposed to be played outside in the weather elements on grass. Sweetest. That's football. Not in a dome stadium on artificial turf. Anyway. All right. So let's what do we got here? We got the Chicago Tribune. We got a little bit of pregame action here. Let's talk about some pregame action here. So Chicago Tribune is September 11th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. The one thing also was that where are we at here? Chicago Tribune. Here we are. Here we go. Chicago Tribune. See, the one thing is that also this is preseason too. So it's not, the coverage, especially sometimes for the away teams, right? This game was played at like 8:15 at nighttime A lot of the newspapers, had written their stories for the next day. So there wasn't a lot of awesome coverage of this game in the New York papers. And I said, once again, it was an exhibition game. Basically during the regular season, almost all the games were played during the daytime. So the following day, there was always good coverage on it. But I mean, this is, once again, just exhibition. So there wasn't a ton of great coverage on this game here. So, but you'll notice here, this was previous. Whoop. Bears and Giants meet for the Armed Forces Relief. Once again, charity game. This is the 14th, as you see right here. 14th annual Armed Forces game. Now you'll see here the bear. Oops, sorry, buddy. My dog's at my feet here. Right. So I guess they started. It looks like 1946. Bears won the first 5. Then the Browns came in. The Browns are very good, obviously back then. Then the Browns beat them again. 54 and 55. The Bears won, then the Browns won, and then the Bears won the last 2, and the Bears would win this one too. So the Bears did very well in this Armed Forces game. All right, so here's offense gets first big test. Unbeaten record also at stake. Here's right what they're anticipating the starting lineups to be. Pre-game ceremony 8. The game kickoff at 8:30 at nighttime. Chicago football fans get their first opportunity for first-hand inspection of the Bears championship possibilities tonight when George Halas brings his unbeaten squad. Now, because maybe I didn't go over this that well, but let's see here. 1, 2, 3. This was obviously the 5th preseason game for both teams. Now, the Bears played the Green Bay Packers in Milwaukee. Then they played in Lynn, Massachusetts against the Eagles. Then they played in Houston, Texas against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they played in Jacksonville, Florida at the freaking Gator Bowl against the Washington Redskins. So this is their first kind of home game, but it's actually, once again, as I said, it's not the field that they normally play at. They don't play at Soldier Field. They played at Wrigley Field. They wouldn't play their first game actually at Wrigley Field until October 11th. And I said the Giants wouldn't play their first game at Yankee Stadium, including the preseason, nothing until October 18th. Which is good and bad because you figure, right, if you're sharing a stadium with a baseball team, like, the Bears did it with the Cubs, the Giants did it with the Yankees. Well, you figure, it's a long time before you even get to set foot on your home turf, right? But a lot of those games are exhibition games. And then when you finally do come home, there's only a 12-game schedule. You got 6 home games. You might only be like 9 games left, 10 games left in the season. And if you got 6 of your final 9 games or so at home, you got a chance to win the division or so, and you're playing almost all your final games at home. Hey, that's a benefit, right? This is the 14th annual Armed Forces game. The kickoff time is 8:30. So don't be late. The opposition will be the New York Giants, the defending champions in the Eastern Division of the National Football League. And the big winner will be the benefit associations of the various branches of the armed forces. Soldiers Field ticket offices will open at 9 a.m. this morning. New York provides the proper test for the Bears. Now, once again, you'll notice here, most of the time it was pretty good opposition they played against. They've been playing the Bears. The Bears have been playing the Browns, and they've been playing, they played in 1950. They played the Eagles, who won the championship in 1949. Then they've been playing the Browns and the Giants ever since 1951. So, they've been playing good opponents, which obviously also helps draw in a bigger crowd. New York provides the proper test for the Bears, who in their last two games have run up a total of 106 points. Giants have not allowed an opponent to cross their goal line in their last two starts, as they shut out the Giants shut out the Packers and they shut out the Lions. The Giants won 14-0 against the Packers, and they beat the Lions the previous exhibition game 38-0. So something's got to give, right? The customary military pageantry, which has become traditional with the series, will attract many of the anticipated 40,000, of course, but the chief interest will be in assessing the strength of the Bears, whose foraging on far scattered exhibition fields again has lifted them to the forefront among the favorites. Pittsburgh, Washington, Philadelphia, and Green Bay have fallen to the passing of Zeke Bretkowski, Ed Brown, and Rudy Bukic, and the running of Willie Gallimore, Rick Caceres, Johnny Morris, and Merrill Douglas. None of these foes is very prominent among the title favorites in the National League race, but Pittsburgh and Washington are regarded as good Eastern Division representatives. Well, Washington and Green Bay is considered greatly improved. The Bears took them in stride. Washington 52-14, Pittsburgh 54-17, the Eagles 24-21, and Green Bay 19-16. If the Bears dispose of, all right, so we're going to go to, all right, let's see here. The Bears dispose of the Giants, pennant fever, or that portion of it left over from the White Sox binge, will run rampant in Chicago again. The Giants, still famed for their part in last December's sensational sudden death playoff game, have added to the cast, which forced the powerful Baltimore Colts past regulation quarters to decide the championship. They can be considered even stronger than the club, which met Baltimore in the presence of Rosie Greer, is as important to their defense as his clippings indicate. And Rosie Greer, the defensive tackle for the New York Giants, was injured. I think he started the 58 championship game, but had to take him out. He was injured, and that really hurt the Giants, their defensive front. That really, really hurt them. Probably wasn't the only reason. It was one of the reasons why they lost. It wasn't the only reason, but I mean, when you lose Rosie Greer as your defensive tackle, and that hurt the Giants. Greer missed the championship game with a thigh injury, which has been cleared up. Bear enthusiasm stems largely from reports filtering out of the club's Indiana training camp, where a less vigorous early season schedule is said to have been instituted. Unlike other years, regulars such as Caceres, Bill George, Joe Fortunato, Bill Bishop, Fred Williams, and the remainder of the dependables have not been asked to play as long nor progress as fast as in other seasons. Brought to a peak gradually, they can reasonably be expected to be stronger in November and December showdowns when pennants are won. And I'll tell you what, as we showed you how streaky the Bears were, I mean, first 5 games, they were 1-4. But in November and December, the final 7 games, they won every game. Several factors have made it possible for Harris to move less desperately through the exhibition schedule. 3 quarterbacks who are pressed with nothing more than earning the starting assignment has made it possible for Hallis to use them on an appearance schedule. Friday night, it will be Ed Brown's turn to start. By the end of the exhibition series, Zeke Bretkowski and Rudy Bukic, too, will have had equal opportunity. Some outstanding rookies also have furthered the policy. Willard Duviel from Southern Methodist, SMU, has had one of this year's 1 year's experience in Canadian football, has eased the pressure at end, where the return of Jim Dooley also has been a tremendous help. By and large, however, it will be the veterans who will be asked to carry most of the load, not only against the Giants Friday, but against the rest of the league starting on September 27th. New York also will be relying on veterans, including such well-known bear hunters as Frank Gifford, Alex Webster, Sam Huff, Rosie Brown, and Kyle Rote. By all means, add to this group George Shaw, the refugee from Baltimore. Now, the Giants, one of the things the Giants had, they had Frank Gifford wanted to try his hand at possibly becoming a quarterback. And Jim Lee Howell, obliged. So he let Frank Gifford play quarterback some during the exhibition. But the Giants, they had five. You had Griffin, including Frank Gifford. They had five quarterbacks. I mean, they only had, so many guys on the run. They don't have, it's not like the 53-man roster they have nowadays. I mean, the rosters were even smaller back then. And the Giants had five quarterbacks. And they had Frank Gifford, they had Charlie Connolly, they had Don Heinrich, who they drafted, I think, in 1954. They traded for George Shaw, and then they drafted in their first round of the 1959 draft, Lee Grosskopf. So they had five possible quarterbacks on their roster. I mean, that's too many. That's too many. All right, so let's go to the Morning Star, September 11th, 1959 edition of the Morning Star. Right. I gotta find it. There we are. All right. Bears have stronger squad for 1959 race. Chicago Bears figure to be stronger on both offense and defense in 1959, but don't ask George Halas, owner-coach, to claim the National Football League's Western Division championship yet. We don't know how much the other teams are improved, he said. And when you look at the teams we've got to play twice, Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Green Bay, and Detroit, how can you claim any victories? Rookie should help the Bears. Joe Robb of Texas Christian has been a pleasant surprise at defensive end, and Richie Pettibone has looked good at defensive halfback. Pete Johnson, a 200-pounder from VMI, will be used at halfback or fullback and should add zip to the offense. John Adams, a 235-pounder from Los Angeles State, who reported late, has been particularly impressive. According to Halas and his scouts, Adams can play halfback or fullback. He's a good receiver, a good passer, has great speed, and might become a Mr. Everything. Rick Caceres and Merrill Douglas return at fullback. Speedsters Willie Gallimore and Johnny Morris at halfback, and Harlan Hill, Jim Dooley, Ralph Anderson, Bob Jewett, and rookie Willard Duviel are available to play end or slot back. Thus, the quarterback slot appears to present the only offensive problem. Halas will rely on Zeke Bradkowski, Ed Brown, and Rudy Bukic, the later obtained on waivers late last season, to call signals. Their performances have been adequate and sometimes impressive in exhibition games, but what they'll do during the season is problematical. Last season, both Bradkowski and Brown were erratic, but both in the past have been effective, and if they return to form, the Bears' attack ought to be better. Defense was the most solid part of the club last season, and with added experience, it should be better. Bill George, the defensive signal caller, rates as one of the best in the league, and the line has plenty of size and speed and experience. Linebacker Chuck Howley was injured, though, and probably will miss the early season games. Pass defense should be better with J.C. Caroline assigned full-time to the secondary, and with Pettibone moving in, rookie Ed Kelly from Texas also could work in as a defensive back. The offensive line should be stronger because of added experience, and it too will have plenty of size and speed. A crowd of 50,000, let's say, I forgot the luck. 43,485, so they were close. A crowd of 50,000 is expected in Soldier Field Friday night for the exhibition National Football League game between the unbeaten Chicago Bears and the New York Giants. The game is the 14th in the Armed Forces Benefit Series, a promotion that has raised $548,000, over $500,000 for the Army Emergency Relief, the Navy Relief Society, and the Armed Force Aid Society. The Bears' backfield unit will be quarterback Ed Brown, halfback Jim Dooley, and Willie Gallimore, and fullback Rick Caceres. All right, let's see. Now what do we got next? Next, the Staten Island Advance. What do they got to say on this? All right. Let's go to the September 11th, 1959, of the Staten Island Advance. Okay. Football Giants tackle the Bears. All right. Back on an even keel after a shaky start, the New York Giants meet the Chicago Bears in Chicago tonight on the first leg of a cross-country hop that will eventually lead them to Los Angeles and the opening of another National Football League campaign. Well, the Giants, they played after this game. They went out in Utah, and then they wind up playing in Los Angeles. So they got their frequent flyer miles in. That's for darn sure. Coach Jim Lee Owl's Eastern Division champs, now 2-2 on the training camp circuit, take to the road again after tonight's Soldier Field game with the undefeated Bears, and will conclude their preseason schedule Saturday, September 19th, against the San Francisco 49ers at Salt Lake City, Utah. Then comes the big regular season opener against the touchdown-minded Rams in the Los Angeles Coliseum Saturday night, September 27th. Giants lost their first two preseason games last month, 21-17 to the Eagles and 28-3 to the Colts, but have since righted themselves and will be working on two straight shutout wins when they hook up with the Bears tonight in the annual Armed Forces benefit game. After the Baltimore loss, the Giants' defense solidified. The offense began to take shape under backfield coach Al Sherman, who took over for Vince Lombardi, who went to obviously coach the Packers. And the result was a 38-0 lacing of the Detroit and a 14-0 defeat of Green Bay, bringing New York to the 500 mark with 2 games remaining prior to their Los Angeles opener. Tonight's game will be televised by CBS on Channel 2 with Chris Schenkel doing the commentary, and will be seen here starting 11:15. So basically, the game in New York will be broadcast after the game is over. Game starts at 8:30 in Chicago by 11:15 because it was a little bit different game back then. They don't have 300,000 commercials like they do nowadays, and also the game by 11:15 was over, so that way they would show it. But so if you wanted to see it in New York, you want to see it, you have to stay up to probably about 1:00 in the morning to see the whole game. All right, let's see that. All right, so let's go now. As I said, well you take a little look here, and this will show you kind of like what kind of coverage. I mean, like the New York Times. Plus, also, I mean, baseball was still king back then in the 50s. So a lot of the New York Times, their articles were based on baseball. All right, I got to find it here. It says the New York Times is in September 12th, 1959 edition of the New York Times. Bears top the football Giants. Ed Brown paces 18-6 victory. Now, the interesting thing about this, too, and I believe it is said in one of the articles I'm going to read, weird, there was 4 touchdowns scored. Every extra point was missed. 4 extra points were missed. And they're not 30-something yarders like they are nowadays. They're all marked down at the 2, so they're like 9-yard. Every one was missed. In end, Jim Dooley snared 2 touchdown passes tonight and led the Chicago Bears to an 18-6 victory over the New York Giants in the National Football League exhibition. The triumph was the 5th for the unbeaten Bears, who scored all 3 of their touchdowns on passes, 2 of which were triggered by their quarterback, Ed Brown. Dooley, who missed much of the 1958 season because of injuries, caught 10 passes for 137 yards. A sturdy Bear defense kept the Giants in their own territory throughout most of the second half. The loss was the third for the Giants in 5 preseason starts. The Bears broke a 6-6 tie early in the second half when the Giants gambled and lost. New York had the ball on its own 34-yard line and 4th down and 1 with 4th and 1 yard to go. Phil King tried to crash the line, but the Bears held and took over. Ooh. Chicago drove for 2 first downs and finally scored on a 10-yard pass from Zeke Bradkowski to Dooley. Chicago sealed the deal. Sealed the issue late in the fourth quarter on a 56-yard drive capped by a 6-yard touchdown pass from Brown to rookie end Willard Duviel. Hope I'm saying that right. New York's only score came midway in the second quarter. Charlie Connolly relieved George Shaw at quarterback and connected on 4 passes to lead an 86-yard drive, which ended with Alex Webster bolted into the end zone from the 1-yard line. E. Rich Barnes blocked Pat Summerall's attempt conversion, and the Giants led 6-0. The Bears took the kickoff, and after Willie Gallimore had ripped off 22 yards, the Giants' defense stiffened. Faced with a 4th-and-1 situation, the Bears gambled and won. Rick Caceres smashed through the center for the first down. Brown then hit Harlan Hill with an 18-yard pass, and 2 plays later, Brown connected with Dooley on an 18-yard toss for the touchdown. Sam Huff blocked John Aveni's kick, and the half ended 6-6. Giants moved into Bear territory late in the fourth quarter on a Connolly to Kyle Rowe pass, but 3 more aerials failed, and the Bears took over on their own 44 to drive for the final touchdown. As you see, right? Right, see here, yeah. Everything was a 6. 3 touchdowns. Every extra point was missed. Crazy. All right, what do we got now here? Okay, let's go to this back to the Staten Island Advance. This would be the September 12th, 1959 version or edition of the Staten Island Advance. What did I have to say here? Once again, I mean, this is the New York coverage. It's not a lot. Football Giants gamble and lose to the Bears 18-6. No social graces for those big bad Bears from Chicago. Make a tactical faux pas, I think that's what it is, against those bruisers, and they'll run you down. That's the way the undefeated Bears played it last night as they whipped the defensive-minded New York Giants 18-6 for their 5th National Football League exhibition victory. The Bears, who had scored 106 points in the last 2 games, and the Giants, who had held their opponents scoreless in a pair of exhibitions, were tied 6-6 in the third quarter. Giants had the ball, 4th down and 1 to go on their own 34. They gambled. They lost. The Bears stopped Phil King short and took over. Then the Bears marched to 2 first downs and went ahead to stay on a 10-yard scoring pass from Zeke Bradkowski to Jim Dooley. In the only other game, Bobby Lane threw 2 touchdown passes as the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Cardinals 21-13. Dooley, who caught 10 passes, for 137 yards, had scored the first Bears TD on an 18-yard aerial from Ed Brown after the Giants had taken an early lead on Alex Webster's 1-yard plunge. Brown pitched 6 yards to rookie end Willard Duviel for an insurance touchdown in the final quarter. And there we go. An oddity was the missing of all extra points by the Giants' Pat Summerall and the Bears' John Aveni. And then they go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers game. Weird. I mean, it's like they're talking Giants and Bears, and then boom, they're going to Pittsburgh Steelers game. And then we got Giants, Bears, and where am I? We're Giants, Bears, bam, back into the Pittsburgh Steelers game. I don't know. But see, this is pretty much like the coverage that the New York papers had. There was quite a few other papers like the Daily News and all, but very small coverage, was rather minute. All right, so now let's go next here to the Rock Island Argus. Oh yeah, let's try that. And then we'll go to the Chicago Tribune. There's some coverage on the Chicago Tribune. So we're going to go to the Rock Island Argus. Oh yeah, the September 12th, 1959 edition of the Rock Island Argus. The Rock Island Argus was a if you're an old fartlek and you enjoy the old time stuff, the Rock Island Independents were covered extremely well by the Rock Island Argus newspaper. Just in case you're wondering. Probably not, but just in case. All right, what the heck we had here? September 12th. There we go. Up. Oh, my goodness. There we go. September 12th, 1959, of the Rock Island Argus. The Bears roar again, earn win number 5. No social graces for those big bad Bears from Chicago. Make a tactical, it's the same, almost the same thing. That's the way the undefeated Bears played it Friday night as they whipped the defensive minded Giants. Bears who had scored 106 points. It's like the same exact article. Yeah, it's the same exact article. You seeing this? As the one I read in the Staten Island Advance. That's crazy. The Bears marched to 2 first downs and went ahead to stay on a 10-yard scoring pass from Zeke Bratkowski to Jim Dooley. And then bam! And they go right into the Pittsburgh Steelers-Chicago Cardinal game. And they talk about tonight's exhibition program, headlined by nationally televised ABC, at 10 o'clock between Washington and Green Bay and Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then the 49ers and the Rams. Sunday, the Colts, who are 4-0, take on the Eagles at Philadelphia, and then the Cleveland Browns play the Detroit Lions. So it's almost the same exact. Crazy. But you see, I mean, you look here. I mean, Baltimore, right? Is the Dodgers and the Giants play each other. I mean, you can see, obviously it's right in the middle. The final push for. Do they have the standings? I know the Yankees were way out of it. Here we go, way out of it, which is weird for the Yankees, like in the 50s, to be out of it. But Chicago and Cleveland were battling it out, and then down here. Actually, what wound up happening would be, see, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh in 1960. They would be the team, but the Giants, the Braves, and Los Angeles, they all were battling it out. And I believe the Milwaukee Braves actually got in. I believe it was the White Sox and the Braves in the 1959 World Series. So this was. Obviously, you got other teams like Philadelphia's 19. I mean, these teams are way out of it. The Cubs are way out of it and all. But, with a couple weeks left in the season, right, you got this battle. You got Chicago and Cleveland, right? And, either team could have won that one. Chicago wound up winning. And you got 3 teams right here within a game of first place. So, baseball was still huge back then. That's why, like, a lot of this is just, once again, these are exhibition football games. But the Chicago Tribune actually has something on this game. All right, so let's go here. Let's go to the September 12th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. I think they might actually even have, if I remember correctly, maybe a couple pages, maybe. Let's see here. Bears passes beat the Giants 18-6. 43,385 watched Chicago win their 5th in a row. And we got a little bit of and Jim Dooley scoring Bears' first touchdown on 7-yard pass from quarterback Ed Brown in the second quarter against the Giants Friday night in Chicago. Now, this is very typical of back then. It's like they take the picture and you can see the players, but it looks like they're playing in complete darkness. That's the way. a lot of the pictures look. Same thing here, right? It's Jim Dooley again. The Bears, and number 43 catches a Zeke Bratkowski pass for a touchdown, covering 17 yards and breaking the tie in the third quarter. All right, let's see here. Yep. Long script. So I guess it was the starting. Well, this I don't know. Well, see, because this is not. See, this is the Bears offense. This is, see, usually it says there's a quarterback. Jim Patton's not the quarterback. Dick Lynch, he might have been the left halfback on defense, but Roosevelt Greer was not the tackle, the right tackle on offense. So this is the Giants starting defense. This is the Bears starting offense over here. And you see, all extra point kicks were blocked. All four of them. That's weird. I mean, a lot of them, were blocked or either missed, even as close as they were back then. But to have all four, that is a bit odd, especially for Pat Summerall. He was a very good extra point kicker, but it got blocked. A New York Giant defense that had been heralded and one of the best in the National Football League met more than its match in a stout Bear defense before 43,385 top-coated spectators in Soldier Field last night and went down to defeat 18-6. Strangling all but one of the Giants' threats, the Bears defense gave up its attacking unit 80 chances to challenge the vaunted prowess of Rosie Greer, Sam Huff, Jim Kakavich, Andy Robustelli, and Dick Modzelewski. Ed Brown and Zeke Bratkowski split the challenge into 36 rushes and 38 passes that netted 355 yards. Very good day. Brown threw 2 touchdown passes. Bratkowski threw another one as the Giants had taken a brief lead on a second period plunge by Alex Webster. Jim Dooley caught 2 of the Bears' touchdown passes, and the final score of the evening was made by rookie Willard Duville, an end who 1 year ago disenchanted owner George Halas by showing up for a contract conference wearing sideburns. Ooh. Duville, who won reinstatement as a candidate for this year's squad by leaving his sideburns in Canada last fall, took a 6-yard pass from Brown to wind up a 56-yard drive that started when a Giant attempt to fool the Bears fooled only the Giants. Don Chandler, New York's great punter, back apparently to kick on 4th down, decided to pass instead and found no receivers down the field. The Bears took over on downs. Now, that's interesting because in those other articles, they were talking about Phil King. There was no mention of a Don Chandler possibly trying to throw a pass on a 4th down. Dooley's first touchdown pass was for 7 yards and wound up an 80-yard advance in 10 plays that began with a kickoff after the Giants scored in the second period and included a 22-yard sprint from scrimmage by Willie Gallimore. I mean, Rick Caceres and Willie Gallimore, they're 2 good running backs. Dooley, a leading candidate, let's go to page 3, column 2. Page 3, column 2, there we go. A leading candidate for the Most Valuable Player Award, won last year by Gallimore, faked 3 Giant defenders, Dick Nolan, Jim Patton, and Sam Huff, on the goal line to take a pass from Bratkowski for 10 yards. It was one of 10 passes the speedy end caught for a total of 137 yards. Wow, as the Bears alternately hit the Giants on the ground and from the air. After a seemingly interminable period of sparring and fencing for position, the Giants started the scoring under the direction of old Charlie Connolly, a second period substitute. They drove 83 yards, the longest sustained march of the game, in 10 plays and got into scoring position when Alex Webster, one of football's great backs, made a spectacular catch of Connolly's 26-yard pass to put the ball on the Bears' 3-yard line. 2 plays later, he plunged the final 2 yards. Thereafter, however, the Giants weren't able to get any kind of a threat underway. They went from the intermission until the middle of the 4th period before crossing midfield and then penetrated only to the Bears' 44. The Giants had no offense. The game must have set some kind of a professional football record for conversion futility when Pat Summerall and rookie John Aventi missed all the extra point attempts. 2 were blocked. Okay. 1 was kicked into the line. Wow. That was probably Aventi's. Pat Summerall. I think Pat Summerall's was blocked. Pat Summerall ain't going to, well, not saying he wouldn't, but he was usually too good. So if anybody kicked 1 into the line, it was probably Aventi. And the other bounced back from the crossbar. Wow. So 2 were blocked. 1 guy kicked it right into the freaking back of the line. And 4 extra points were missed. Wow. It was the first time in the memory of most of the press box historians that 4 extra points have been missed in a National League game. And especially, I said, because back then, the ball was placed, I think it was like the 2-yard line. So they moved it back 7 yards. That's like a 9-yard field goal. I mean, unlike other armed forces games, there were few outstanding thrills. Penalties and some drop passes that constantly floated into the arms of Giant receivers prevented the Eastern Division champions from starting trouble in the second half. It was the Bears' 5th consecutive armed forces victory over the Giants, who have yet to win a game in the 14-game series. Well, the Giants haven't played in every all 14 armed. I mean, the Browns, the Giants and the Browns played a lot in the 50s. But the Giants apparently played 5 of these armed forces games and lost everyone to the Bears. Let's see. Who have yet to win a game in the 14-game series and brought the Giants record for the show to 3-11. I don't know, because it also kept the Bears undefeated in the present exhibition series with 5 victories. I'm not sure, because if you see in that other article, let's say, I gotta look here. Let's see there. Okay, here, hold on. Huh. Well, that other article, it showed where, oh, here we go. Previous games. Now, in the Chicago Tribune, it showed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The other 13 games were played between the Bears and the Browns, the Bears and the Giants, the Bears and the Eagles one, the Bears and the Boston Yanks one time, the Bears and the Washington Redskins one time. So, according to this other article, the Chicago Tribune article from September 11th, this is the 14th game in the series, but they haven't been all against the Giants, according to this article here. But the Giants have never won. The Giants say 1, 2. Giants are 0-5. This will be the 5th time the Giants have lost in this armed forces game. So, but anyway, we actually have some stats. Yeah, I mean, look at this. Giants only 12 first downs. The Bears at 23. I mean, look at it. Net, you're 166 yards gained. Bears 355. The Bears more than double what the Giants did. 132 yards rushing. Not bad. 223 passing. Giants were 11 out of 29. They were 17 out of 38. Giants punted 9 times, and they went for it a couple times on 4th down. So the Giants had punted even more. Let's see, kickoff return, number of fumbles. They didn't lose any. Bears fumbled twice, lost once apparently. Not too many penalties. That's one thing I do notice is that back then, I mean, there were not necessarily a lot of times a lot of penalties called as like they are nowadays. Sometimes the games are kind of unwatchable because every play there's a penalty marker going out there. It's ridiculous. But once again, it was exhibition game. The Bears in that game were certainly the better team, that's for sure. But the big winners of it, obviously, were the armed forces, where this was the 14th consecutive year that the Bears played a game, benefiting the armed forces, which is fantastic. But both these teams, were far from, would certainly be heard from, obviously. But the Bears were only came one game from they were in second place, one game behind Baltimore Colts. They finished with 8-4. The Colts were finished with a record of 9-3. So the Bears are obviously one of the best teams in football, and the Giants had the best overall record at the end of the season. Because once again, didn't help them when they got to the championship game, but the Giants had a very good season. But once again, the Giants' best quarterback was Charlie Connolly, and he was only in there sporadically. Like I said, the Giants had 5 quarterbacks that kind of like shuffling in and out there, and it just So I think Bill Parcells' thing I said kind of best. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. You know what I mean? So if you don't know who your quarterbacks are, sometimes that's. The Giants, when the season started, they knew Charlie Connolly was going to be the quarterback, and it showed because they would finish 10-2. So both these teams, after the regular season started, both these teams, had very, very good seasons. So that's the way it was on this date, 9/11, September 11, 1959, as the New York Giants went to Chicago and played the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.